The words hung in the air of Marcus Bennett's glossy corner office like cigarette smoke, acrid and suffocating. "You're too old to lead the team, Sarah. We need someone more dynamic, someone who can keep up with the pace of modern business." I stared at him, this man half my age who'd been appointed CEO of Bennett Technologies barely 6 months ago. The same man who'd inherited the company from his father. A man I'd worked alongside for 18 years, helping build this firm from a struggling startup into an industry leader. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and at 54, I'd spent nearly 2 decades as head of strategic partnerships at Bennett Technologies. Or rather, I had until this moment. Marcus leaned back in his ergonomic chair, a rehearsed look of sympathy plastered across his face. Behind him, San Francisco's skyline stretched out through floor-to-ceiling windows, the morning fog rolling past luxury high-rises and tech company headquarters. The same view I'd watched change over 18 years of early mornings and late nights. "The industry is evolving," he continued, fingers drumming against his mahogany desk. "We need fresh perspectives, innovative thinking, someone who understands the modern digital landscape." I almost laughed. I'd been the one who orchestrated our company's digital transformation 5 years ago. Long before Marcus had finished business school, I'd secured our partnerships with Silicon Valley's biggest names. But none of that seemed to matter now. And Greg Thompson fits that criteria. I kept my voice steady, professional. Greg was 32, fresh from a minor success at a smaller tech firm, and, more importantly, Marcus's former fraternity brother. "Greg has an impressive track record," Marcus replied, not meeting my highs. "His vision aligns perfectly with where we need to take Bennett Technologies." Vision. Of course, because 18 years of proven success couldn't compete with whatever buzzwords Greg had dropped during his interview. "The transition will be immediate," Marcus continued, sliding a folder across his desk. "HR has prepared a generous severance package, 2 months' salary plus benefits through the end of the quarter." I didn't touch the folder. Instead, I thought about the Weber contract, our biggest pending deal, worth nearly $50 million. The contract I'd spent the last 8 months carefully nurturing, building relationships, navigating complex negotiations. The contract scheduled to be finalized next week. Marcus must have seen something in my expression because he quickly added, "Greg will handle the Weber closing. Fresh energy might be exactly what we need to push it over the finish line." I stood slowly, smoothing my charcoal blazer. "Good luck," I said simply, my voice carrying none of the turmoil churning inside me. Marcus blinked, clearly thrown by my calm acceptance. He'd expected tears, perhaps, or anger, maybe even begging to stay on in some reduced capacity. Instead, I gave him a small, knowing smile. "I'll have my desk cleared by lunch," I added, turning toward the door. "Sarah," he called after me, a note of uncertainty creeping into his voice. "You understand this isn't personal, right? It's just business." I paused in the doorway but didn't turn around. "Of course, Marcus. Everything's just business." As I walked back to my office, I passed familiar faces, people I'd hired, mentored, watched grow from entry-level positions into skilled professionals. Many avoided eye contact, the news of my impending departure having already spread through the office's nervous system of whispers and instant messages. A few gave me sympathetic glances, quick nods of solidarity before returning to their screens. I sat at my desk, soon to be Greg's desk, and began methodically sorting through 18 years of accumulated files, memories, and relationships. My phone buzzed with a message from James Weber himself. "Sarah, heard rumors about changes at Bennett. Everything okay? Getting nervous about next week's signing." I stared at the message for a long moment. James Weber was old school like me. He valued relationships, trust, personal connections. He'd chosen Bennett Technologies specifically because of my reputation for integrity and attention to detail. I typed back, "Changes confirmed." Wish I could say more. "Call me tomorrow." His response came immediately. "Will do. This better not impact our deal." "Oh, Marcus, you have no idea what you've just done." I spent the next 2 hours carefully organizing my files, making sure everything was properly documented and labeled. To anyone watching, I was being the consummate professional, ensuring a smooth transition. But with each folder I sorted, each email I archived, I was also methodically removing 18 years of personal notes, contact details, and relationship insights that existed nowhere else in the company's records. Greg appeared around 11, already wearing the mantle of authority like an ill-fitting suit. "Sarah," he said, hovering in my doorway, "Marcus asked me to shadow you this afternoon. Get up to speed on any pressing matters." I looked up from my packing, noting his casual stance, the way his eyes were already measuring the office for redecoration. "That won't be necessary, Greg. Everything's properly documented in the system. I'm sure someone as dynamic as you will figure it out quickly." He shifted uncomfortably, perhaps sensing the steel beneath my polite tone. "Well, I was hoping we could specifically discuss the Weber contract. Marcus mentioned it's close to closing." "Everything you need to know is in the file," I replied, gesturing to a thick folder on my desk. What I didn't mention was that the file contained only the official documentation, none of the personal insights, none of the carefully cultivated relationships, none of the unwritten understandings that had taken months to build. Greg picked up the folder, thumbing through it with a frown. "This seems complicated." "Oh, it's quite straightforward," I'd assured him, knowing it was anything but. James Weber is a traditionalist who values personal relationships and trust above all else. "I'm sure you'll get along splendidly." Greg's frown deepened. He might be young and dynamic, but he wasn't completely stupid. He sensed the trap but couldn't quite see its dimensions. "Look, Sarah," he started, adopting what he probably thought was a conciliatory tone. "I know this transition must be difficult. If you'd be willing to stay on as a consultant for a few weeks." "That won't be necessary," I cut him off smoothly. As Marcus said, Bennett Technologies needs fresh perspectives. I wouldn't want to get in the way of progress. By lunch, my personal items were packed into a single box, 18 years reduced to some family photos, a few awards, and a small jade plant that had survived countless late nights. I'd sent a brief professional email to my team, thanking them for their hard work and wishing them well. As I stood to leave, my assistant Michael appeared in the doorway, his face a mix of disbelief and concern. "This isn't right," he said quietly. "Everyone knows you're the backbone of our client relationships." I gave him a small smile. "Change is inevitable, Michael. Sometimes it's even necessary." "But the Weber contract," he glanced over his shoulder before lowering his voice. "James Weber specifically requested you handle everything. He won't be happy about this." "That's not my concern anymore," I replied, picking up my box. "I'm sure Greg and Marcus have everything under control." Michael's expression suggested he doubted that very much. "What will you do?" I paused at the door, considering. "Take some time off. Maybe catch up on reading." "Oh, and Michael, you might want to update your resume. Change has a way of cascading." As I walked through the office one last time, I felt oddly light. The anger and hurt were still there, simmering beneath the surface, but they were overshadowed by something else: anticipation. Because while Marcus might have inherited his father's company, he hadn't inherited his father's wisdom. He didn't understand that in business, especially in our industry, relationships were everything. And relationships, built over 18 years of trust and mutual respect, couldn't be transferred like furniture or computer equipment. I stepped into the elevator, holding my box of belongings, and pressed the lobby button. Just before the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of Marcus and Greg in the conference room, heads bent over the Weber contract, already looking worried. I smiled. Sometimes being too old meant you learned a thing or two about patience, about timing, about the true foundation of business success. Marcus wanted dynamic. He was about to get a very dynamic lesson in the value of experience. As I drove home, my phone buzzed again. Another message from James Weber. "Tomorrow, 9 a.m. This better be good." I typed back a simple, "Looking forward to it." Then I set my phone aside. Tomorrow would indeed be interesting. Marcus had no idea that by trying to push me out, he'd actually set in motion events that would shake Bennett Technologies to its core. Because while I might be too old to lead, according to Marcus, I was exactly the right age to know how this game was really played, and the first move had just been made. The next morning, I sat in my home office, sipping coffee and watching the fog roll in over the bay. My phone showed 8:55 a.m. In 5 minutes, James Weber would call, and the real game would begin. I'd spent the evening reviewing my personal notes about the Weber contract, details that existed nowhere in Bennett's official files. The cultural sensitivities I'd learned to navigate, the key stakeholders whose support I'd quietly secured, the unwritten expectations that could make or break the deal. All information that Greg, for all his dynamic energy, would never know. At exactly 9:00 a.m., my phone rang. Sarah, James's familiar voice came through, tense with concern. "What the hell is going on over there?" "Good morning, James," I replied calmly. "I assume you've heard about the changes." "Changes?" He barked out a laugh. "I got a call yesterday from some kid named Greg Thompson, talking about exciting new directions and modernizing our partnership framework. Sarah, we've spent 8 months crafting this deal. What happened?" I took another sip of coffee. Marcus Bennett decided the company needed younger, more dynamic leadership. I was informed yesterday that I'm too old to lead the team effectively. Silence crackled over the line. Then James spoke, his voice dangerously quiet. "Too old? You're the reason we chose Bennett Technologies in the first place. Our board specifically approved this deal because of your track record." "I appreciate that, James, but as Marcus explained, it's just business." "Just business." James's tone sharpened. "This isn't just business, Sarah. This is a $50 million contract that requires trust, experience, and an understanding of our company's needs, none of which this Greg person demonstrated in the 5 minutes I spoke with him." I leaned back in my chair, watching a container ship slowly cross the bay. "What did you think of him?" "Honestly, he sounded like he was reading from a marketing brochure, kept talking about synergy and digital transformation. Couldn't even answer basic questions about our implementation timeline." "I'm sure he'll figure it out," I said mildly. "He's very dynamic." James was quiet for a moment. Then, "Sarah, we haven't signed yet. The board meets tomorrow to give final approval. Given these changes," I cut in smoothly, "James, I wouldn't presume to advise you either way. That wouldn't be appropriate given my current situation. But if he were advising me—" "Well," I said carefully, "I would remind you that there are other firms who understand the value of experience and relationship-based business practices. Firms where key personnel changes don't happen without client consultation." "Like Meridian Technologies?" James asked pointedly. I smiled. Meridian was Bennett's biggest competitor, known for their stable leadership and client-first approach. They do have an excellent reputation. "Would you happen to know Daniel Hayes over there, their head of partnerships?" "I might," I replied. Daniel and I had maintained a respectful professional relationship over the years, despite being competitors. We'd even had lunch last month discussing the industry's troubling trend toward ageism. He's been in the industry almost as long as I have. "Too old to lead, I suppose," James said dryly. "I should probably give him a call, just to explore our options." "That would be prudent business practice," I agreed. "Though of course I couldn't officially recommend that." James chuckled. "Of course not. Sarah, what are your plans?" "Taking some time off. Considering options." "Don't consider too long," he said firmly. "Good people are always in demand. I'll be in touch." After hanging up, I spent the next hour responding to messages from other clients who'd heard about my departure. I was careful to remain professional, never criticizing Bennett Technologies directly. I didn't have to. My clients were smart enough to read between the lines. Around 11 a.m., my phone lit up with a call from Michael, my former assistant. "Sarah," he said in a hushed voice, "you need to hear this. Greg just got off a call with James Weber. It was not good." I made a noncommittal sound, encouraging him to continue. "Weber asked about specific provisions in Section 7 of the contract, the custom implementation requirements you negotiated." Greg had no idea what he was talking about. Then Weber started asking about the Richardson deployment timeline, and Greg tried to bluff his way through it. Weber just about exploded. I closed my eyes, picturing the scene. Section 7 had been crucial. I'd spent weeks negotiating those provisions, understanding exactly what Weber's technical team needed. None of that was explicitly documented in the contract. It had all been based on detailed discussions and mutual understanding. "What happened next?" I asked. Greg ran to Marcus's office. "They've been in there for an hour. Marcus looks like he's about to have a stroke." "I'm sure they'll figure something out," I said. "They're very dynamic after all." Michael snorted. "Sarah, there's something else. Word is Weber's board is meeting tomorrow about the contract. Rumor has it they're considering other options." "That's unfortunate," I replied mildly. "Change can be disruptive sometimes." "Sarah," Michael's voice dropped even lower, I just got a LinkedIn message from a recruiter at Meridian Technologies. They're suddenly very interested in Bennett employees with client relationship experience. I smiled. Daniel Hayes worked fast. How interesting. You should explore all your options, Michael. Career growth is important. After hanging up, I opened my laptop and began drafting my own future. I had offers to consider. Several competitors had reached out within hours of hearing about my departure from Bennett. But I wasn't in a rush. Sometimes the best moves in business, like in chess, required patience. My phone buzzed again. A message from Marcus Bennett himself. Sarah, need to discuss Weber's situation urgently. Can you consult for a few weeks to ensure smooth transition? We'll make it worth your while. I stared at the message, remembering his smug smile just yesterday when he told me I was too old to lead. Amazing how quickly too old could transform into urgently needed when reality hit. I took my time responding, letting him sweat a little. Finally, I typed, I don't think that would be appropriate. As you said, Bennett Technologies needs fresh perspectives. I wouldn't want to stand in the way of progress. His response came immediately. Sarah, please. Weber's threatening to walk. Name your price. I didn't bother replying. Some lessons needed to be learned the hard way. Instead, I opened my email and began composing a message to Daniel Hayes at Meridian Technologies. We had interesting things to discuss about the future, not just mine, but potentially those of several talented Bennett employees who understood the value of experience. By late afternoon, my phone was buzzing constantly with updates from various sources within Bennett. The Weber situation was apparently escalating. Rake had somehow managed to offend not just James Weber, but two other key stakeholders during a hastily arranged conference call. Marcus was desperately trying to salvage the situation, but his attempts to smooth things over were only making it worse. I picked up my phone and dialed a familiar number. Daniel, I said when he answered, I believe you had an interesting conversation with James Weber today. Daniel Hayes chuckled. I did indeed. Very enlightening discussion of the importance of stable leadership and long-term relationships in our industry. And how did that go? Let's just say Meridian's board is convening an emergency session tonight to review a potential new contract, one worth approximately $50 million. I nodded, though he couldn't see me. Interesting timing. Very, he agreed. By the way, when can you start? I smiled. Let's discuss that over dinner tomorrow. I have a feeling we'll have quite a bit to celebrate. After hanging up, I walked out onto my balcony, watching the last rays of sun paint the bay in shades of gold and pink. In less than 24 hours, Marcus Bennett's world had begun to unravel. Not because I had actively sought revenge, but because he had fundamentally misunderstood what made his company valuable. It wasn't about being young or dynamic. It was about trust, relationships, and a kind of wisdom that only came with experience. Tomorrow, he would learn that lesson in the most expensive way possible. My phone buzzed one final time, another message from Marcus. Sarah, please, the board is asking questions. We need to talk. I set my phone down without replying. Sometimes, silence was the most eloquent response of all. The news broke at 9:15 a.m. the next day. I was enjoying my morning coffee when my phone erupted with notifications. The headline from Tech Business Daily said it all. Weber Industries signs $50 million contract with Meridian Technologies, abandons Bennett deal. Within minutes, my phone was ringing. Marcus Bennett's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. He called again and again. Finally, I picked up on his fourth attempt. You planned this, he accused without preamble, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. Planned what, Marcus? I kept my tone neutral. I'm not involved with Bennett Technologies anymore. As you made very clear, I'm too old to be effective in today's dynamic business environment. Cut the act, he snapped. Weber just signed with Meridian. Our stock is already down 12% in pre-market trading. The board is calling an emergency meeting. I took a careful sip of coffee. That sounds challenging. I'm sure someone young and dynamic like Greg can handle it, though. Greg's resigned, Marcus spit out. This morning. Didn't even have the courage to do it in person, just sent an email. I couldn't help but smile. How unprofessional. In my day, we believed in handling things face to face. Sarah, please, his voice cracked slightly. We need you back. The board, they're asking questions. About my leadership, about the Weber contract, about why I let you go. Help me fix this. Fix what, Marcus? You made a business decision. As you said, it wasn't personal. Through the phone, I heard raised voices in the background. Someone was demanding Marcus's immediate presence. I have to go, he said quickly. The board's waiting. But this conversation isn't over. Actually, it is, I replied calmly. Oh, and Marcus, you might want to check your other major client relationships. I hear Meridian's been making some interesting calls. I hung up before he could respond. Michael texted me minutes later. Board meeting is chaos. 3 other major clients called this morning expressing concerns about company direction. Marcus looks like he's about to pass out. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my laptop to review the job offer Daniel Hayes had sent over last night. The position was everything Marcus had claimed I was too old for. Executive Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at Meridian, with a seat on the executive committee and a clear mandate to bring my experience and relationships to bear. The salary was double what I'd made at Bennett. My phone buzzed again. A message from James Weber. Contract signed with Meridian this morning. Daniel Hayes mentioned you'll be joining them. Looking forward to working together again properly. I smiled, remembering Marcus's dismissive attitude just 2 days ago. It was amazing how quickly the tables could turn when you understood the true foundations of business success. Around noon, another update from Michael. Marcus just got called back into the boardroom. Looks like he's about to throw up. I was about to respond when my phone rang, a number I hadn't seen in years. Robert Bennett, Marcus's father and the company's founder. Sarah, his familiar gravelly voice came through. Hell of a mess my son's made. Robert, I acknowledged. I heard you were enjoying retirement. Was, he grunted. Until I got a call from James Weber this morning. Had some choice words about the company's new direction. I stayed silent, letting him continue. The board just asked for my input, he said. As founder and majority shareholder, asked me what I thought about Marcus's recent leadership decisions. And what did you tell them? Told them my son's an idiot, Robert said bluntly. Told them he just lost our biggest contract and one of our most valuable executives because he bought into some nonsense about youth over experience. I heard the pain in his voice, the disappointment of a father watching his son fail. I'm sorry, Robert, I said softly. I know this isn't easy for you. Not your fault, Sarah. You didn't deserve what happened. Hell, I built this company understanding that relationships and experience were everything. Seems my son never learned that lesson. He's young, I offered. Maybe this will teach him something valuable. Robert snorted. Expensive lesson. The board's calling for his resignation. Share price is down 18% now. 3 major clients have already announced they're reviewing their contracts. My phone pinged with another message from Michael. Marcus just left the boardroom. Security's escorting him out. Holy shit. Sarah, Robert's voice brought my attention back. I know you're probably headed to Meridian. Can't blame you. But if you were interested, the board's looking for new leadership. Someone with experience. Someone who understands what really matters in this business. I sat back, surprised. Are you offering me Marcus's job? The board is, he corrected. I'm just the messenger. They've seen what happens when you prioritize youth over wisdom. They're not eager to repeat that mistake. It was tempting, a perfect piece of poetic justice. Return to Bennett as CEO proved definitively that I wasn't too old to lead. But something held me back. I appreciate the offer, Robert, I said carefully, but I think it's time for me to write a new chapter. Meridian values what I bring to the table. They didn't need to learn that lesson the hard way. Robert was quiet for a moment. Can't say I'm surprised, he finally said. You always did understand the importance of principles, while their gain is our loss. Several times over, it seems. After we hung up, I sat in silence, letting the morning's events sink in. In just 3 days, Marcus's decision to dismiss me as too old had cost his company a $50 million contract, multiple major client relationships, their stock value, his own position as CEO, and several key employees who were already in discussions with Meridian. My phone buzzed one final time, another message from Marcus, this one reading more like a plea. I was wrong. Completely wrong. Please, help me fix this. I started to type a response, then stopped. Some lessons didn't need words. Sometimes the best response was to simply move forward, letting success speak for itself. Instead, I opened my email and began drafting my acceptance letter to Meridian Technologies. Tomorrow, I would start proving just how valuable too old could be. 6 months later, I stood at a podium in Meridian Technologies' main conference room, presenting our quarterly results to the board. The numbers spoke for themselves. 40% growth in strategic partnerships. 5 major client acquisitions, including Weber Industries, record-breaking client retention rates, and a stock price that had risen 25% since my arrival. In the audience, Daniel Hayes, now our CEO, nodded approvingly. He understood what Marcus Bennett had failed to grasp, that true business success wasn't about age or trendy buzzwords. It was about experience, relationships, and the wisdom to balance innovation with proven principles. After the presentation, Daniel approached me with a broad smile. "Spectacular work, Sarah." The board's thrilled. Though I hear Bennett Technologies isn't quite as happy. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, their new CEO is struggling to rebuild after Marcus's departure. Apparently, being young and dynamic isn't quite enough to restore client confidence. I had deliberately avoided following Bennett's news, but snippets still reached me. The company had promoted internally after Marcus's forced resignation, choosing another young executive who promised to revolutionize their approach. The results had been predictably disappointing. "How's Robert taking it?" I asked, thinking of Marcus's father. Daniel shrugged. "Word is he's considering selling his shares. Meridian might be interested in an acquisition, actually. Wouldn't that be ironic?" Indeed it would. The company that had deemed me too old to lead might end up being absorbed by the one that valued my experience. As we walked back to my office, a corner suite with a view rivaling my old one at Bennett, my assistant Sophie appeared with an urgent message. "Sarah, James Weber's on the line. Says it's important." I took the call immediately. James had become one of our strongest advocates, referring 3 other major clients to Meridian since making the switch. "Sarah," he said warmly. "Hope I'm not interrupting anything." "Never too busy for you, James. What's up?" "Just wanted to give you a heads up. Remember that custom implementation framework you developed for us at Bennett?" The one young gray couldn't understand. I smiled at the memory. "Of course." "Well, we've been implementing it here at Meridian with even better results. Word's gotten around. You're about to get a call from Advanced Systems about developing something similar for them." Advanced Systems was one of Bennett's few remaining major clients, or apparently former clients. "Thanks for the warning," I said. "I'll keep an eye out for their call." After hanging up, I walked to my window, looking out at the city skyline. My team at Meridian was thriving, a mixture of experienced professionals and younger talent, each valued for their unique contributions. Several have followed me from Bennett, including Michael, who now led our client relations department. My phone buzzed with a LinkedIn message. Marcus Bennett wanted to connect. His profile showed he'd landed at a small startup, several steps down from his former CEO position. His message read, "Sarah, I learned my lesson. Hard way. Would love to grab coffee sometime and apologize properly." I left the request unanswered. Some bridges, once burned, didn't need to be rebuilt. Instead, I focused on a more interesting message that had arrived earlier, an invitation to speak at a major industry conference about building sustainable client relationships in the digital age. The irony wasn't lost on me. 6 months ago, I had been too old to lead. Now I was being asked to share my wisdom with the industry. That evening, as I prepared to leave the office, Daniel stopped by. "Sarah, got a minute?" I nodded, gesturing to the chairs in front of my desk. "The board just approved our expansion plans," he said, sitting down. "We're opening 3 new regional offices. I want you to head up the initiative. Full autonomy, bigger team, substantial budget." I smiled. "Sounds challenging." "It is. But you've more than proven you're up for it." He paused, then added, "You know, when we hired you, some people questioned whether we should be bringing in someone with your experience level." "You mean my age," I said dryly. He grinned. Their exact words were, "Shouldn't we be looking for someone younger, more dynamic?" Sounds familiar. I told them to look at the results, not the birthday. Best decision we ever made. He stood to leave, then turned back. "Oh, and the Advanced Systems CEO called. Wants to meet next week. Apparently, Bennett's new innovative approach isn't working out so well for them." After Daniel left, I sat in my office as the sun set over the city. My phone buzzed one last time, a message from Robert Bennett. Sarah, board approved the sale. Meridian's offer was too good to refuse. Wanted you to hear it from me first. Take good care of my company. You always understood its true value better than Marcus did. I smiled, thinking about the journey of the past 6 months. Marcus had thought he was dismissing an outdated employee. Instead, he had set in motion events that would reshape the entire industry. The next morning, I walked into a meeting with my team to discuss the advanced systems opportunity. Looking around the table, I saw faces both young and experienced, each bringing their own valuable perspective. Before we start, I said, I want to share something important. Success in this business isn't about age. It's not about being the youngest or the most dynamic. It's about understanding that true leadership comes from wisdom, relationships, and the ability to balance innovation with proven experience. Heads nodded around the table. They understood, even if Marcus never had. Now, I continued, opening my laptop. Let's talk about how we're going to welcome advanced systems to the Meridian family. As we dove into the discussion, I couldn't help but smile. Sometimes the best revenge wasn't about getting even. It was about proving, through undeniable success, exactly why experience mattered. Marcus had thought I was too old to lead. He had been wrong about that, just as he had been wrong about so many things. And now, as I led my team into Meridian's brightest future yet, that mistake had cost him everything: his position, his company, and ultimately his father's legacy. But that was just business after all. Nothing personal.